Cool.
Hi, how's it
Hi.
going?
Thanks, Ronald. It's going. I just got back from a long walk on the beach. I don't know about you.
I too may or may not have gotten a long walk on the beach on the way to and from McDonald's. It's very nice.
Nice. That's a very scenic route, I think.
Indeed.
Awesome. Sweet. So you know what else is awesome? C sharp productivity, which is our
Segue.
topic for the day. Yeah, great transition. And productivity for C sharp, especially when it comes to VS Code, has not always been the easiest of times, right? So we're aiming to improve that experience with the C sharp Dev Kit extension, which is our main focus of this talk. So we're going to be talking all about C sharp Dev Kit and the end-to-end productivity experience that it provides from the moment you create or open an existing project to debugging, testing, editing, code navigation, and all that jazz.
Yeah, I guess
So
I've heard that they actually took chunks of code, pieces of code from Visual Studio for Windows, and then they ported it. So there's productivity tools, there's features that I'm used to seeing on full V Visual Studio that now are coming to my favorite code editor in Visual Studio Code. So it's not just IntelliSense, it's fully featured. So you're going to show us some of that stuff. And you've got a Mac, if I understand, and I've
I
got
do.
Windows. So we're going to see it on multiple operating systems.
Great, yeah. Because you can now code C sharp anywhere. That's like our thesis. Cool. So I'm going to share my screen and give you a briefer on what C Sharp Dev Kit is in case you're new to it or you need a refresher. So C Sharp Dev Kit is an official Microsoft extension. It provides rich C Sharp language support and productivity features, which we will go into in depth in a few. And yeah, if you're familiar with Visual Studio or you use Visual Studio, we have taken some of those existing features, such as the Solution Explorer for additional project management or the Test Explorer and some of those capabilities, and we've integrated it into VS Code. We didn't just copy and paste it and call it a day. We gave it the good old VS Code twist. And because this is a VS Code extension, now you are able to write C Sharp from anywhere. So you'd be like me, I'm on a Mac. Scott says he's on Windows today. I think you at one point tried to do it on a Raspberry Pi. Did you get that to
Yeah,
work?
I've
Yeah.
actually got it running. That's a true story. I have it running. I have VS Code and the VS Code extension running on my Raspberry Pi 5. So I've got a Raspberry Pi. I've done it on a 3, a 4, and a 5, but this is a new Raspberry Pi 5. It does run well on Linux. I've got it on Ubuntu on my desk right here, which is really cool. But it isn't just, you said it was an extension. Isn't it a family of extensions?
Yes, I lied. So it is really a family of extensions, but once you install the one, you're golden. So when you install the C Sharp Dev Kit extension, you're really getting three main ones. The Dev Kit extension itself gives you the Solution Explorer and the expanded Test Explorer. And the base C Sharp extension that comes with it is what's giving you the rich C Sharp editing experience, stuff like IntelliSense, colorization, code navigation things, perf and reliability improvements, and other miscellaneous items that we'll probably be exploring. And the IntelliCode for C Sharp Dev Kit, which is what gives you AI powered start and whole line completions. That said, if you are a Copilot fan, you can use Copilot alongside C Sharp Dev Kit. And also, if you are a Maui developer or a Unity developer, as long as you have C Sharp Dev Kit installed, you should be able to take advantage of those two extensions as well. So, something for everyone.
I also
And
want to give you props, though. Shout out for not using PowerPoint. You did PNGs inside of VS Code, which is the most badass thing that I have seen in a long time. We're
thanks.
doing all of our demos, including the slides themselves, existing in
Mm-hmm.
VS Code. So shout out to Leslie for making it happen.
Yeah, and shout out to, I don't know, someone who's pretty cool gave me a pretty good idea about doing that. So shout out to them as well. They might be in the vicinity. I don't know. So yeah, so getting started with C Sharp Dev Kit is very easy to do. You can go into extensions, or maybe if you're already on a web browser, you can find it that way. But if you type in C Sharp, it should be one of the first things to pop up once this error goes away, hopefully. Unless it's not going to be nice to me. Interesting. But just know that usually when you type in C Sharp, it should be one of the first to bubble up. This is the one that you want. And once you've got it installed, you should be able to view a walkthrough that comes with it. It should automatically appear, but if it doesn't, or if you X out of it, like I do sometimes accidentally, no worries. You can do Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P, go to Open Walkthrough, and then select Get Started with C Sharp Dev Kit, which I highly recommend that you go through, especially if you're new to C Sharp Dev Kit or if you're new to .NET C Sharp development period. I think it's a really nice just intro on getting started cleanly. But the one thing I want to point out in this walkthrough, because we're going to be talking about a lot of this stuff later in the demos, is making sure you install the .NET SDK. If you don't have this installed, you won't be able to build your .NET apps. And that's not fun. I don't like to write things and just not get to see the end result. That's lame. So make sure you have that installed. The good news is that with the latest update that we have done pretty recently, you can now install the .NET SDK directly from VS Code. So yeah, we mentioned the PowerPoint slides. I mean, you still don't have to leave VS Code to do all this. You can install directly from the window proper. I already have it installed, so I'm not going to go through the full process, but yeah, pick either the latest version of .NET, which we recommend, or an earlier one, hit install, and then a download terminal is going to show up. It'll download, it'll walk you through the installation process, and then reload your VS Code window, and you are good to go. That's all you need. So from here, you've got a couple of choices. Once you've done the SDK installation and DevKit is installed, you can create a .NET project or open an existing one. We're going to open an existing one in a second, but you have several options for creating a .NET project, either by this button here that you've got that will appear, or you can do the terminal if that's still your thing, .NET, create new project, whatever that command is, you can still use that, or you can use Control-Shift-P to get a new project from there. And now you've got a list of different project templates to choose from. I'm going to choose a Blazor web app, but notice that there's now Aspire support. So if you're familiar with .NET Aspire, or you want a better way to write cloud native based applications in a .NET space, that is your place to be. And now you can work with your .NET Aspire apps directly in VS Code as well. I'm not demoing it now because it's like hot off the press. It's like it came out the oven like 10 minutes ago, basically, and is still too hot. It needs to cool down because otherwise it will burn my hands. So definitely check it out though when you get the chance.
And that list there, that's the same list I would see if I was doing that at the command line. One of the things that's interesting is that we want the aesthetic of the C# Dev Kit to match the aesthetic of VS Code, right? Like in Visual Studio for Windows, you go File, New Project, and it's a lot of GUI, but that command palette is really baked into how VS Code does stuff. And that list that you see is the same list you would see if you were in Visual Studio and you said File, New Project, and the same list you would see if you said .NET New at the command line, which I think is really interesting. It's expressed within the style, the user interface, and the aesthetic of VS Code. So it should feel comfortable to users of VS Code.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not, we didn't copy paste, so it shouldn't be a jarring experience. And if it is a jarring experience, share your feedback so we can make it better. So that
we're going to see more of that later, because that's not just during the File New Project process. It's through all the aspects of your interaction, whether it be adding NuGets and doing other things like testing and navigating as well, which is cool.
Exactly. Yeah, so once you've created your project, it'll show up in the usual workspace that you're probably familiar with if you use VS Code a lot. But it gives you all the folders and files that are associated with your app, but sometimes there's folders or files that you don't really care about in your day-to-day development work, right? Like, Scott, when's the last time you used the object folder on a regular basis with your development?
Been a long, I don't even know what's in there, honestly.
Right.
I don't want to see the obj folder.
Exactly. So if you want a streamlined experience that is a lot more project focused and lets you know everything that's related to your project, that's more of a day-to-day basis, you should definitely take advantage of the Solution Explorer, which gives you a streamlined view of your application and some of the more critical folders and files that you're going to be using.
Yeah, I like to think of it as like there's the physical view, like the reality of the disk is the way that VS Code has always done things. Like that's what's on disk. But the Solution Explorer is very much a virtualization of that. It's the one that we're used to seeing. You can see obj, you can see properties, you can see WW root, but here you've got your Solution Explorer popped up. You can see the solution is called Blazor App 2. The project beneath it is Blazor App 2. And then when that opens up, and we'll see it on my side as well, it looks like your machine's having trouble both streaming or on
streaming on Teams is
I think
always a toss-up.
It's time to get you a newer Mac. I think your Mac is working pretty hard right now.
I think so too.
Sweet. There you go. So go ahead and pull that razor. Fold that one down there. Get rid of that bottom one, or make that what's it called? A accordion.
I think,
go away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see like dependencies that make up your particular project. You can see a list of all your projects. Stuff like, as you notice, the object and bin folders have been removed. The .cs proj files have been consolidated. So you can still access them either via that default workspace or via Solution Explorer. But now you've got a more focused experience. So the good news is you can take advantage of one or both. So whatever floats your boat, really. And
Yeah, I think
this
it's a very clean thing to do, and it's also very familiar, right? Like having frameworks, having analyzers, and then of course the dependencies that we'll see a little bit later.
Really. So speaking of a little bit later, I was going to F5 this, but because my computer and streaming don't quite mix, I don't want to just give up our wonderful F5 experience on a basic Hello World app, right? Like I think our session's called something real world. So I think we should step things up and talk a little bit about more of a real world application, don't you think?
Yeah, because right here you have just a Blazor app that you made, but I wanted folks to know that I do a lot of my dev in my day-to-day on my machine. So we'll take a break from your machine for a second, and then we'll get my machine set up over here. I'll go ahead and share my screen. And what I wanted to show was part of the Hanselman empire, Leslie, consisting of 3 websites. Hanselman.com, the website I've had for like 30 years, since I remember the first time I could make a domain and register a domain. And then Hansel Minutes, which is my podcast. So this is the actual source code to the podcast, and it's loaded up within Visual Studio Code using those the extensions. And in fact, I've got a ton of extensions installed. Certainly I've got 37 extensions, because I'm doing all kinds of stuff.
Beat that.
Yeah. Well, and they're all running within that extension manager. I've got Docker, I've got Copilot, I've got my Hex editor, because you never know when you might want to edit some Hex. And within all of this is that C# dev kit. And as you pointed out, the dev kit loads up the C# extension and IntelliCode. So all of those exist, and I can confirm that they're there by zooming in down to the corner here. And that's how you know, right, that you've got the C# dev kit installed and running. And then, of course, if you're feeling sassy, you could certainly switch to the pre-release version, but I'm staying on release right now.
I was actually on pre-release.
Oh, you were on pre-release? Yeah.
I didn't say as much. Yeah.
Those are those spicy bits. You maybe should have stayed on the stable stuff. I've also got VS Code Pets, which I think is an important addition here, to just call out that if you need a rubber duck, you can always add one to your system. Now, I wanted to call out a little bit more on your physical versus logical thing before we do a debug, because I wanted to point out, like you said, there's just a bunch of stuff I don't really want to see in my day-to-day.
.bs, yeah, you never use a .bs or .bs code.
Yeah, they're there. I know that they're there. But what I can do is I can close that accordion down, right? And if I want to, I can always get back there. I could look at that within the File Explorer. So I've right-clicked here on the Solution Explorer, that logical view, that virtual view. I want to call out new project and add existing project, like your Shift Control P, right? That gets you the palette. I can go and say new project here. So there's new project. Or I can right click, which is a very familiar gesture to folks that are using Visual Studio on Windows. And then check this out. Look at that. Oh my God.
Yeah, I love it. Packages. Yeah, that's really great. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you could also like manage your packages in C# project in VS Code?
It would be nice, because historically, I would go and run around here. I mean, okay, where's the CS proj file? Okay, hang on, find that, and then I'm off in here, right? And I'm like, oh no, what am I doing? It's XML.
And then human error is going to happen. You're going to spell something wrong. You're going to get a number incorrect.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be a whole thing.
Within packages, I've got the versioning set up for these packages, which is great, right? So I can open those up, see the specific versions. And in fact, if we wanted to, we could open the CS proj, see that they line up on these particular packages. And then how would I go and manage those packages? How would I go and do that? I could do it at the command line. I could edit the XML manually.
That's not fun. Manually? Ew.
Yeah. But if you go and say, where am I? How do I get my dependencies back up? Do I need to be on pre-release for this?
No, Yeah, you shouldn't have to. You were using it. I saw you doing it the other day. You have packages open already.
Yeah, but I want to right click and get onto that. I think that's pre-release.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it was pre-release. Shoot.
Yep. This
Which
is a
version
good
were
point.
you using pre-release the other day?
Well,
Yeah.
because I think that this is a great point, because when demos have things like this happen, we have to remember that some of these bits are spicy and coming out like this week.
Yeah.
Right?
Some of these came out like 11 o'clock at night. Heads
Yeah.
up.
We want to make sure that people have the new stuff and the official stuff. So in this case here, I just switched. And this is also a nice thing that our folks can do this. We can try is you can switch back and forth. It's not a big deal to switch around. So in this case here, I've switched over to a different build, and we'll go and we'll say packages. And here I can see, again, within that, oops, let me try that again. Sorry. The Microsoft Teams little sharing your screen thing, you can't see it. It's actually covering.
Same.
It's covering this UI up here. So where I'm trying to show. So check this out. Add, remove, and update our packages all available within that UI. So if I type in NuGet, and we can go and add, this is really cool. So you can say add a NuGet package, right? Let me zoom in a little bit better there. We'll add one, say to core. You can just put in your search term, right? If you wanted to search for something, and maybe I'll use the Humanizer, which is a great NuGet package. And it's going to go and search, and you can find the one that you want. And then it'll find the version, tell you which one's latest. Then you can go and pick it, and it'll add that to your project. So now it's going to bring the Humanizer down. There it is, right? And then I can right click and update or remove, which is, again, that familiar gesture. So what's nice about it is I could do this, right? I could go and say NuGet, remove package, which one, pick it. Now it's gone, all at the command line. I was not using, not command line, all with the keyboard rather.
Yeah.
I wasn't using my mouse, right? But for folks that are not quite there yet, you can always do right click. But if you do it from the command line and you go like, .NET NuGet remove, it'll get reflected and it'll see that as well. So it's really all about choice, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. And that was a massive customer ask for a while for folks who've been using C# Dev Kit for a bit. So definitely check that one out in particular. And share
I think it was very elegantly.
That was long awaited.
It was very elegantly done. And I really like that that menuing process here. Like, again, as you go through, you pick a thing, you do the search, get the nice async search, then you pick, and then you get the version. I'm doing all of that, just enter, tab. It's really clean. So kudos to the folks for pulling that off.
Totally. And while we're still under dependencies, not only can you see your package or analyzer or framework dependencies, but you can also see project dependencies, right?
Oh, that's a really great point, actually. Let me find one. So like Playwright tests here has not just a packages dependency, which we saw just now, but a projects dependency. So these Playwright tests depend on this one. And then within my testing here, and you can see there's actually a little testy icon there, little beaker.
Yeah, I like that there's different icons depending on the project type you're doing.
The icon work is done nicely. And then we actually have some alternative icons. This is another thing people don't really realize. Because VS Code is so extensible, you and I, Leslie, have added alternative icons. So there's lots of different material icons and VS Code icons to get even cooler icons for these things. So here we've got packages, and then we've got project references. So these are references within our solution. And this
also, something I want to point about the project references in particular is that, like packages in the past, it used to be you need to go into your CS proj and then pray to God that you're spelling the name of your project right. So now you don't need to do that. You can just add a project reference directly from the Solution Explorer, which is very handy, very similar to adding a NuGet package. Nice
little quality of life additions that I think are really cool. And actually another quality of life one that is nice is navigating around. So again, not using the mouse. I kind of like the idea to drive stick shift, and I like to use my keyboard. So I could go and hit Shift Control P, which brings up the command palette, and you can see here where I've got my different commands. But I can also just look for, like, here's a particular chunk of code I want to look for. I'll say show database tests, SDT, just like that navigation that we see in Visual Studio. Now I'm looking at these tests. And I want to point out that these are tests, right? These are unit tests. And look at that. The little unit test thing pops up there.
So cool. So it recognizes your test, that's applicable to most frameworks. So MS Test, NUnit, XUnit, Playwright.
Yep.
In your case, lots of different test frameworks are compatible with C# Dev Kit. And yeah, so you can run your test inline in the editor. You can debug your test inline in the editor. You can view the statuses of each of your tests in the editor. So if you are team editor all the way in your VS Code life, like you have the Explorer collapsed most of the time, you can do a lot of this work directly in the editor and just command palette, which is very exciting.
Yeah. I will say one gentle correction though. Playwright in this particular case, which is a browser automator, isn't directly supported. What we're doing is we call Playwright from a unit test framework, which then causes your Playwright test to work. So that's how that's actually working. So if we go and look at some unit tests here, these are all database tests. We can come over here on the left-hand side and pick testing.
Yeah.
Right. The little
and this was a window that existed in VS Code prior to C# Dev Kit, but it honestly was not the most useful thing unless you had a bunch of extensions on top of it. So now it's once you build your test project, it will automatically be able to pick up all of the different tests that you've defined, and you can see a giant list of them. As you can see there, you can run them all at the same time. You can run them individually. There are different test commands you can access via the command palette that let you do just run only the tests that failed or something like that. So yeah.
So these got discovered, right? So I could go and run the entire app. And you can watch on the left-hand side the little asynchronous little dealies. It's running around, discovering them all, running all of the tests, figuring them all out, and it ran my entire suite there in about 9 seconds. Let's break a test though.
Yeah, I want to break a test. Right? That's more fun.
Let's go and break a test and run them again and see if we can see some failures. Because it's, they say red, green refactor, right? You don't trust a test unless you see it fail. Okay, so that one failed. And then look at this. You get this nice peak that says, oh, in our test data, we expect 694 podcast episodes, but we've only got 604. Pops it up, puts you exactly on the line that you want, and then gives you the text output that you would have seen if you'd run .NET Test directly.
So helpful. And also, again, if you're a terminal person, you can view a lot of these test results via the terminal as well. So I think you can either click on I believe the 3 dots up where it says testing, if you wanted to open it quicker.
Oh, you mean right here?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
This is a great point, actually, because over here, I've got 19 tests, which is not major, but for a small site, it's okay. You can imagine that filling up very, very quickly. Yeah. Over here, what we're seeing is the test list again, but the instance of that test run, which is really cool. And you showed me this yesterday. I had never seen this before.
Yeah, this one's pretty cool.
So look at that.
Right, yeah, so you get similar values. So again, if you're a terminal person, you still got the terminal. If you're more of a windowed person, like maybe you're coming from VS and onto VS Code, you've got that experience as well. So again, options.
So here I'm going to make that change, and then I'll just run just that one test. And now it's fixed. In 2 seconds, I've now repaired that test, and it's reflected over here in the test results. Now, I wanted to go back to navigation, right? We know we can click up here, and we know we can start typing in, whatever, and find my code. But I can hover over these, and I'm holding down the control button, which lets me click and then do a peek, navigate, which I think we're very spoiled on. This is just really a lovely editor feature there. You can see that there's a partial class. This one's tricky. There's actually 2 show classes that are partial.
Yep.
And it's smart enough to know that.
Yeah, so if you wrote some code at 2 a.m, you were extremely tired, and all of a sudden it's 2 weeks later, you're looking at your code for the first time since that 2 a.m. night, and you're like, what the heck did I write? And you also maybe don't remember what file you put the class definition in or whatever. You can just use a peek or a go to definition, and it'll automatically take you to where that definition is at. Save you the trouble.
So I can click and I can go directly to them. I can get peeks, find specific definitions. I can right click, find both definitions. Hey, we can hear you, friends. Hey, live streamers. Cameron, my friend. Oh, goodness. Can you all hear us?
Oh, okay. So I guess we're still going.
It's live television, baby.
Hi, yeah, welcome to live TV.
All right.
Never a dull
Let's
moment.
keep going. So I can right click. I can do things like rename symbol, format document, which are all things, but also things like find all references and find implementation. So I can find all
You can also
references
access
to
that
it.
one in particular via where it says like 27 references up top with the partial class.
Which one?
You can just click on that. See where it says 27 references above the partial class definition, V2 show? Yeah, you can just click on that. Oh, sorry, in the editor itself.
Oh, okay, show me.
Cool. So yeah, the example you're currently on, it says 4 references above. Yeah.
Oh, yo, look at that. Oh, that's a great tip, Leslie. So here, that's a great point. So here we're seeing this little bit of tooltip text kind of floating in that middle space between line 36 and 37. I click on that, I get a peek. Mm-hmm. Look at that.
Peek your references, peek your classes.
And then click and then go directly there, which is great. And then look at this. Click on the little I have an idea guy. And now you've got your refactors and your surrounds and Copilot if you want it, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so little IntelliSense and everything. So I think we talked about some editing stuff. We talked about testing. We've talked about the Solution Explorer. We haven't talked about debugging too much. I think we should run something. We could run a test, or we could run.
Yeah, actually, let's do that. I think that's a great idea. It's one, we all know it'll run. I think the interesting part, to your point, is debugging into a test would be a little tricky, right?
That'd be kind of fun.
So let's do that, right? So let's go into show database tests. Let's break one like we had before. Okay, we'll make it a little bit bigger, just because big fonts for the folks on their phones. We've broken that test. And then we'll run it. Maybe the font was too big, freak me out. All right, there we go. Now, we can say debug test at cursor or debug tests in current file, which is cool. So let's try doing an individual debug test at cursor. Oops, let me put a breakpoint.
Oh, breakpoint.
Breakpoint.
I hate when I do that. It's like, oh no, I didn't mean to.
Now again, I want to call out, it might look a little crowded, but again, if you just go like this and make, that's kind of your normal size. So don't look at the font, but just get a sense if you can see what's going on.
We're using big font so that, so you can see it. But
yeah, we're doing the big fonts out of love. I don't want people to feel that. But over here, you've got your call stack, you've got your thread pool, you can see what's paused, you've got your breakpoints, right? Yeah. Again, a little crowded, but we're doing that on purpose.
Yep.
And then now I can go and break and then move over. Look at that.
Check it.
Because you were the debugger PM for a while, right?
Yeah. And something I really want to highlight here is that with C# Dev Kit, the F5 experience is, I think, significantly improved. Like, I think we take F5 for granted. Sometimes it can be super easy to do in VS, but in the past, at least when I would try to debug something in VS Code, even something basic like a Hello World console app, it would be hard to do. You had to edit a launch settings JSON file, and it may not always work, even though you're following the documentation to a T, but that documentation might be partially out of date. It's just a whole tedious thing for debugging, which we all can agree is already tedious to do sometimes.
I think you make a really great point. I also want to call out that we've got we had some arguments on Twitter a couple of days ago where people don't like their var, and they're like, I don't know what a var, I don't know what type it is. I'm hovering over it. I'm getting that type. But then if you look at shows, which is a list of a complex type, I just hovered over that. Look at that.
Oh, nice.
And I can see, look at that, shout out to Avalonia showing up in our debugger there.
Right. That's a fun fact I don't believe it's related to C# Dev Kit, but if you are like me and I don't like bars, not gonna lie, but sometimes they're there. And it takes my brain a minute to process, what type is this?
What are you doing? Leslie, you're blowing up the whole show at the last 30 seconds. You don't know. You now you're gonna tell me you do 4 spaces and not tabs. What are you doing?
No, I'm team tabs. Bringing it more. But there is a setting that you can access. We don't have too much time to show it, but it's called inlay hints. This exists in both VS and VS Code. So if you turn on inlay hints, and there's a lot of fine-grained control you have over that setting, then you can view the type a variable that something is inline in your code, which is
Yeah.
very helpful. Yeah. So
Look at that.
I especially like it for like Lambda parameters and implicit variables because those are the biggest frustrations I have sometimes when
What?
right?
What are
Cool, right?
those?
I know. Super cool. I have those turned on. I love them. It makes my life easier.
Leslie, every time we hang out, you teach me something. I never have heard of that in my entire life. Inlay hints. And she's like, "Oh, we're not going to have time to turn that on." I came over here, I type hints, I turned them all on, and my life just got better. I am scandalized. Scandalized.
Sweet. Guess it was okay to break the chat for a couple seconds.
Oh yeah, like there's a script. Come on, friends. Let's be real here.
We did not have a script, folks.
Good stuff. Good stuff. That's 30 minutes, I think. Let's see if our friends in the studio have any questions for us from folks on the live stream, because I understand that there was something coming pretty soon here.
You definitely did break the chat there. That was awesome. As a fellow .NET developer and a lover of C#, and I'm like one of those obnoxious ones on Twitter. I know you know this, Scott. Like, I will defend .NET, and I will try to influence as many people as possible to learn it. But it was awesome to see some C# stuff here at VS Code Day. And we do have a question here. Is there a dev container available for C# that works on both Intel and Apple Silicon?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I will ask Richard Lander and find out, because when you're doing work in a dev container brings in a Docker layer and says, this is the one we're going to base our stuff on. So it would depend on if we have architecture non-specific Docker containers. And I want to say we do, but I think Richard Lander would know that. So that person can tweet us, and we'll add, hashtag VS Code Day and try to get that answer.
Great. That was Don Hunt. So Don Hunt, tweet at Scott, and we'll get that answer to you right away.
Yeah. I believe there is a feature of Docker that is architecture non-specific layer names, and then it pulls in the correct one. So I want to say yes, but I'm not 100%.
Can't lie. All right. Reynolds, you had another question for us?
Yes. We have a question by Richard Lisakowski. So Richard says, and I quote, "There's a lot of enthusiasm behind this one right here, so I got to prep it, within quotes. I installed C# Dev Kit. Now, VS Code asks me for my Visual Studio subscription. Do I have to pay more MS tax or Azure tax to use this? Hey, I thought C# was free, open source software." And in parentheses, FOSS. I'm not even sure what that stands for.
So I think it's unfortunate that it's a little bit negative, but if you have any VS product at all, VS Community, if you're an open source developer, small business owner, it's free. If you already sign into VS Community, sign in the same way. If you're signing into any VS Anywhere, then it lights up. So no, there's no tax. If you've paid, you have it. If you've got VS Community, you have it. Did I miss anything?
Yeah.
Leslie?
No, I think that's basically the short and sweet answer, really. Yeah. Like, even if you just have VS Community, which is the free one, you're good. You should be able to use this for free. So.
Yeah. On my application here, it's on GitHub. It's open source. I'm doing it on my spare time. I'm logged in as
Same. I have it on my personal machine where I don't always use my Microsoft privileges, and I use it totally fine for free.
Yeah, perfect. It's part of the Visual Studio family of benefits.
All right.
That's good to hear. So you hear that, Rich? So don't worry, the Microsoft IRS is not going to be out to get you.
Scott and Leslie, thank you so much for showing all that C# love here at VS Code Day. And thanks for hanging out with us and answering some questions.
It's great.